Everybody, and welcome to One Rep at a Time with me, Chris Stone. I am just starting a couple of minutes early just to make sure that this is all working. Give you a time to give you some time to join. I'm just checking the feed myself, and it looks like it's all working fine and well. That's good. Okay, magic. Right. So yeah, yesterday we had the wellbeing workout at Energy Gym. I put up a wee post about that today. It was really enjoyable. I had a lot of fun. I got a sweat on, and it was the first event of the week, first of three. We have obviously one rep at a time, which is exactly why you're here, and we'll be running through that presentation shortly. And then on Friday, we have a live Q&A with Reese Byrne, who was the very latest guest on the Strong Men podcast. Myself and Reese have a lot of shared interests. We kind of have a similar ethos. I think that's probably the best word to describe it when it comes to fitness training and personal training in particular. It was really nice to interview Reese. And if you've not listened to that interview yet, then do check out the latest episode of the Strong Men podcast. He had lots of really good insight and also opened up a little bit about epilepsy and gave us an insight into that, which was fascinating as well. So, we'll be going live on Friday at 5. So, should you have any questions that you'd like us to answer, or if you've got any questions based off anything Reese went through and said and talked through, in the episode, then this would be a really good opportunity to get those questions in. So we are going to make a start with the presentation. As I've mentioned in previous posts, the presentation is partly about World Mental Health Day and also celebrating 5 years of the Wellbeing PT. So we've got a bit of a mix of some reflections on World Mental Health Day and also some reflections on the connection between the mind and the body, as well as some practical hints and tips that you can take away with you to help you overcome barriers and and achieve your health and fitness goals. So without further ado, we'll make a start. Now, I'm just going to very quickly share my screen here. Okay, grand. Now, I should say before we get into this, if anybody at any stage has any questions that they would like answered, then pop them in the box. So pop them in the box on YouTube, and I can see them, and I'll make sure to answer them to the best of my ability come the end of the presentation. If you're watching this video back, then and anything that I cover is you have any questions on, please feel free to contact me as well. I am very friendly and I like helping people. So make sure to pop your questions in the box. There will be a dedicated point at the end where I discuss those questions. So I wanted to kick things off with this quote. It is exercise alone that supports the spirit and keeps the mind in vigor. Now, there's a couple of things that really stand out for me with this quote, and it's why I like it so much. The first thing is the use of the word alone. It's exercise alone that supports the spirit and keeps the mind in vigor. But the more interesting point, and the second point, is that this quote is actually Cicero, he was a Roman philosopher around 100 BC. So this idea of exercise being good for the mind is not a new concept. This is something that has been around for thousands of years. However, unfortunately, seemingly in our society, we've kind of lost that concept to a degree. So this is what we're going to run through today. The reason I started with that quote is the connecting mind and body section is an attempt to help you understand where that division has come from, and then a section to help you understand the connections between the two and why it's so important we're working on our physical health as well as our mental, and actually how working on one means working on both as well. As I say, we'll then reflect on some common barriers, and I'll reflect on a couple of anecdotes as well from my time as a coach to help you with some common issues and help you to move forward. We'll spend a little time reflecting on the theme of World Mental Health Day, which is mental health as a universal human right. And then we'll also very briefly reflect on what's next for the Wellbeing PT over the next 5 years. As I mentioned, there is a question and answer section at the end as well. So, for any of you who don't know already, just a very quick introduction. So, my name is Chris Stone, and I am a strength and resilience trainer. Now, I've always had a passion for health and fitness, so it's really not a surprise to me that I have ended up in the job that I currently am in. I was that really annoying kid who took in PE who took everything super serious. Like I had to win. I absolutely had to. It was like the Olympic Games for me. And I was involved in every kind of sport under the sun. So I've really enjoyed it. And yeah, it's, as I say, not a huge surprise for me. What is a surprise, though, is the fact that I focus on mental health, and I've done a lot of work in and around mental health as well. I've had some difficult experiences with my own mental health, but that in itself has born a passion for helping others with their mental health as well. And that's where the Wellbeing PT came from. It wasn't certainly my intention when I was a young, fresh-faced PT. I actually wanted to go down the route of strength and conditioning, but as I say, the life circumstances really sort of turned the tide, I guess, on that, and opened my eyes to different possibilities. Which one of which was focusing on mental health, and that's exactly what I did, and I've been doing that now for 5 years, which is yeah amazing. Time has flown by, but 5 years in with the Wellbeing PT, and as well before moving on to the first section, I just wanted to reflect on what World Mental Health Day actually means to me. So it's very clear that there's a huge stigma that exists when it comes to mental health, and that prevents people from getting the help that they need, or even it prevents them from understanding the situation they find themselves in. And that was true for me. I didn't understand what was going on with me. I didn't really believe in mental health at that stage. I thought mental health was a term that was used as an excuse for weak people. And that's why mental health days like this are so important, to help people understand the truths around mental health, and to understand that we all have mental health. In addition to that, there's an incredibly high suicide rate, generally speaking, but this is particularly true in men. If you're a man under the age of 45, your biggest risk of early death is suicide. And the most heartbreaking thing about this is it's a very preventable death. So World Mental Health Day gives an opportunity for me and for you to share our own stories, to work on the destigmatization of mental health, which will ultimately help get people the support that they need, and ultimately as well prevent the unnecessary loss of life as in the long run. Okay, another reason this day is so important is this: the connections between mind and body. And if you didn't know already, that's actually the tagline of the Wellbeing PT: connecting mind and body. So I wanted to start off by just thinking a little bit about this disconnect. Where did this disconnect actually come from? And it's multifaceted and nuanced, I guess, but there's no doubt that there's a very big historical element to this. So mental health issues, as I'm sure you're aware, were misunderstood, feared, and often attributed to weakness or moral failures. As a result, people who were struggling with their mental health were often mistreated or isolated from other areas of healthcare, and yet mental health generally began to become separated from mainstream healthcare, with mental health asylums getting set up in the 18th and 19th century. Now, with modern medicine, the way modern medicine is, we've seen the specialization of healthcare professions as well. So I know it's a lot more complicated than this, or nuanced than this, but physicians, for example, they take care of the physical side, whereas psychiatrists look at the mental health side. So we're seeing that separation between the mind and the body. There's also historically been, and currently still is, a huge disparity in funding and resources for mental health in comparison to physical health. And all of these things reinforce this idea that mental health is fundamentally different from physical health, but that could not be further from the truth, because our mental health and our physical health are deeply interconnected. I want you to cast your mind back to when you were learning about the human body, probably in primary school. You learned about each system separately. So you learned about the cardiovascular system, you learned about the nervous system, the nervous system, you learned about the endocrine system, and you learned them in isolation. But the body cannot be separated and broken down in this way. No system functions in isolation. They're all intricately linked and work together to maintain health and function. Now, one example or a few examples that I like to give to really highlight the connection between the mind and the body is imagine or reflect on a time where you felt either really excited or incredibly anxious. This just was not a mental thing only. If you really consider what's going on in your body when you're experiencing those emotions, there's no doubt that changes occur in your digestive system and your cardiovascular system, for example. So you might feel butterflies in your stomach. You might see an increase in breathing rate and heart rate. And this really highlights this connection between the two, I think, anyway. If we consider stress, stress is one of the leading causes of physical issues, physical health issues, and chronic diseases. And stress leads to an array of these physical problems, which stress is a mental can often be a mental thing, isn't it? Um, and then if you finally think about mental health issues themselves, so people who perhaps struggle with things like depression or anxiety, there are a whole host of physical symptoms that come along with those issues. It's not just mental symptoms. So there is this real deep connection. Everything is interlinked and connected. Now, unfortunately, this separation between mind and body hasn't just affected the healthcare system. It's also affected the fitness industry. There is an incessant focus on body composition and transformation within the health and fitness industry. And exercise is often seen as this physical tool that will allow you to change your body comp. And there's no doubt that exercise is a great tool for that. However, that is literally just one benefit amongst many when it comes to exercise. Now, I don't blame a lot of PTs for having this approach because when it comes to your PT qualification, there are very few. I certainly, when I went through it, there was nothing about mental health. There was nothing about how to train someone who perhaps is struggling with anxiety or symptoms of anxiety. So, yeah, there's no education around mental health when it comes to the fitness industry, and therefore it leads to this sort of thing where these the idea of mental health is often a side note when it should be an equal balance when it comes to your physical health and mental health. We're looking at both of them in the same way. We're seeing exercise as a tool for our mental health as well as our physical health, or maybe even a better way to put it, our health generally speaking, rather than separating them. So the mental health benefits of exercise are definitely overlooked and undersold because working on your physical fitness, it means you're also working on your mental fitness and vice versa because they are connected. Moving on then, I wanted to consider exercise. We'll begin by looking at the current recommendations for exercise and then some of the health benefits. Again, this is not groundbreaking stuff. This is stuff I'm sure you're all very aware of already, but I thought it'd be helpful just to run through it anyway. So firstly, some recommendations from the UK government in terms of exercise. Firstly, be active daily. Secondly, reduce time sitting or lying. Thirdly, and this is a little bit a bit of a bigger section here. 150 minutes of moderate exercise per week or 75 minutes of vigorous exercise per week as a minimum. Now, that might sound like quite a lot, but it's really not, especially when you understand what moderate and vigorous exercise actually entails. So this comes directly from the NHS website, and it'll put it into perspective. Moderate intensity exercise. Well, I should say some of them are quite funny. I don't know how they've worked this out, but yeah, you'll see. So moderate intensity exercise. Some activities include brisk walking, riding a bike, dancing, pushing a lawnmower, and rollerblading. So Yeah, these are some examples of moderate intensity exercise, not particularly taxing for most people. And vigorous exercise, the NHS suggests running, swimming, aerobics, and sport. Now, I was looking through this, I was like, where is strength training? I cannot find it. And actually, strength training would fall under the very rigorous category. So, yeah, that hopefully puts it into perspective that it's not actually as unattainable as it might seem on first reading. The final recommendation that the NHS give is to take part in strength-based exercise twice a week. Now, this is a recommendation that a lot of people don't know, but yeah, strength training twice a week. Now, strength training doesn't just have to be what's pictured here. It doesn't have to be weight training. It could be yoga, Pilates. It could be using resistance bands, calisthenics, and NHS have very helpfully given a couple more examples: heavy gardening, wheeling a wheelchair, and lifting and carrying children. So, I mean, if you've got a kid running about the house and you want something to do, want to get your strength working, just do a few overhead presses with them, a few squats with them, and yep, that's you. That's you. That counts towards your strength based exercise. So, yeah, all in all, it's actually maybe not as overwhelming as it seems. It's a fairly manageable target, I would suggest, for a vast majority of people. Now, the health benefits of being physically active, I don't really need to go into a lot of detail on this, but my point is it's a lot more than just fat loss or body composition change. It's improved cardiovascular health, bone health, energy levels, weight management, sleep, hormone balance, mobility and movement, and of course, my favorite, of course, brain health and function. So the mental benefits of exercise. So as I was highlighting, when we're working on our physical fitness, we're also working on our mental fitness. Strong body, strong mind. Now, there's some research I'm gonna run through. There's specific papers that align with each of these benefits. I'm gonna try and get through this in a oneer. So there's research to suggest that exercise can help with improvements in mood, cognitive function, memory, concentration, decision making, self esteem, self confidence, self efficacy, body image, mental resilience, mental energy, as well as a reduction in stress, depression, anxiety, and symptoms of poor mental health. Okay, and breathe. So, yeah, I hope that conveys to you just the vast array of benefits associated with exercise. Again, this is nothing groundbreaking. I recognize that. You may wonder, however, how does this actually work? Like, why does exercise lead to all of these mental improvements? So, just three things to run through here, just to give you some background around it and some additional knowledge, some of which you might be aware of already. The first one is quite a popular one I'm sure you've heard of before, and this is the release of endorphins. So, endorphins are chemicals that the body releases in response to stress. Now, on that note, stress is not always a bad thing. In fact, we need stress in order for the body to adapt and get stronger and fitter. So, when we are exercising, we're placing physical stress on the body, which causes this release of endorphins. And these chemicals can lead to feelings of well being, that it can help to reduce stress and pain, both physically and mentally. And endorphins are often responsible for that feeling, that sort of post exercise feeling. So sometimes you might be dreading a session or you just can't be bothered, but by the time you finish it, you feel so good. Maybe not all the time, but a lot of the time, you feel much better. And that's primarily down to the role of endorphins. Next, we have increased circulation. So when we're exercising, the heart needs to pump faster to circulate blood around the body, to increase nutrient delivery to the working muscles and organs, and also to help with waste removal. Now, obviously, one such organ is the brain, and there's research to show that exercise can improve cognitive skills, and that's primarily potentially down to this increased circulation of blood to the brain. Now, if you are someone who struggles with procrastination, if you find it very difficult to concentrate at work and you find that it's difficult just to get things done, go out for a walk. go for a walk. And this doesn't even have to be a long walk. Sometimes I know it's like, oh, I can't be bothered. Like, I feel like I need to do like half an hour to make it worth my while. No, you don't. Because there's research to show this paper had participants take part in a 10-minute brisk walk. And simply by doing that, they saw a 10% increase in their cognitive skills. So if you're having a flat day, nothing's getting done, just go for that 10-minute walk. And I can almost guarantee you'll be feeling much better and you'll get a lot more done as a result. And the final thing is brain derived neurotrophic factor. This is a protein that is crucial in the maintenance and growth of healthy brain cells. It's also it plays a key role as well in neuroplasticity, which is a term that you may have heard about before. This is simply your brain's ability to form and reorganize connections. Excuse me. So yeah, it's the brain's ability to form and reorganize connections, and therefore, if we can by exercising, we increase the levels of BDNF that is released into the brain, and therefore we can increase neuroplasticity and consequent brain and improve consequent brain health as well. Reese, who was on the podcast, as was mentioned at the start, he describes it as steroids for the brain. That's how impactful this protein can be. Moving on then, so just do it. Just do it. It's, as I mentioned, the exercise recommendations aren't particularly I can't say that word. They aren't that demanding. They aren't that demanding. And we all know that exercise is important for our health and it's really beneficial. So just do it, right? It's in principle, yeah, simple. Come on, like just exercise. And yeah, it's a lot more complicated than that. I realize that, and I'm being a bit sarcastic here. It is simple in principle, of course, but that does not mean that it's an easy thing to do. If it were easy, there would be no need for there to be 20,000 PTs in the UK, and there wouldn't be any need for things like Weight Watchers or Slimming World or these types of things. There wouldn't be. I personally don't believe we would be seeing a record high for the number of sick days or mental health treatments or suicides even in the UK if it were simple. Or sorry, if it were easy. If it were easy, we would not be seeing these things. Now, I should say as well, mental health issues are, of course, complicated and often do require professional help or treatment. So if you are someone who's struggling with their mental health, absolutely go and see your GP and take their advice and be under their supervision first and foremost. That said, however, exercise is one of the greatest tools that we have to manage and improve our mental health and well-being. It is right under our noses. However, so many of us feel incapable of fully utilizing it. On that note, I'm going to move on and we're going to discuss some common barriers. And actually then discuss how we might overcome these barriers. So the next slide is going to show you some solutions, and I'm going to talk through the barriers that they relate to, as well as a couple of anecdotes. So the first thing, exposure. Exposure. So this is the strategy to overcome anxiety. Now, I don't want to go too deep into the sort of evolution and why this happens, but basically, you will have heard of the fight or flight response. And this is triggered in situations where we feel under threat and that we need protection. We need to protect ourselves. This is a physiological response which basically primes the body to do one of those two things, fight or run, basically. Now, what can happen with anxiety sometimes what can happen sometimes with this fight or flight response is that it begins to get triggered in situations that are actually not threatening. And the gym can be one of these environments. So, what the potential solution to this is to gradually expose yourself to that environment that your brain perceives to be dangerous. So I'll give an anecdote now. One of my clients, she found it incredibly difficult to go down to the gym by herself. So we would have regular one-to-one training sessions When she was with me, she felt safe clearly and was able to get through the session. However, when it came to doing training by herself, she felt so anxious to the point that she would stay away. Now, on that note, if we sort of allow that anxiety to take over and keep us away from the gym in this situation, what that actually will do is it will reinforce this idea to your brain that this is a dangerous situation and I need to stay out of it. And therefore, next time that you consider going to the gym, your brain's going to ramp up that anxiety even more because it remembers last time. Last time I triggered this response and I protected you because you stayed away from the gym. So to get that same outcome again, I need to ramp it up another level and another level and another level every time we stay away. But the opposite happens if we can expose ourselves to the gym or whatever environment it may be. If we can gradually expose ourselves to it, then it teaches the brain that actually, okay, this isn't a scary situation. I survived. I went there and I got my session done and it was okay. No damage, no harm came to me. And in time, instead of that anxiety increasing, it actually reduces. So in this instance with this client, we started off with a 10-minute session in the gym by herself. And you go 10 minutes on the treadmill, that's it. Then next time we're thinking 15 minutes. Can we do 15? If not, we'll stick with 10 for now. But just gradually over time, we're trying to increase that exposure to this environment to the point that now that idea is no doubt still a little bit anxiety inducing, but is it the same as it was a few years ago? No, absolutely not. So exposure when it comes to anxiety. Next, internal focus, and this relates more to body image. Again, I've got an anecdote for this. When I was working with a client, Matt, he came to me initially with a number of body image concerns. He found the gym's environment to be quite a difficult one with all the mirrors and all the people. He felt like he was being watched, and he often found it very easy to pick his own body apart. Um, Even though, from my perspective, he was very much in shape, in really good shape, actually. So what we decided to work on in this instance with Matt was to turn the focus inward. Instead of focusing externally, how can we make it internal? And the way that we did that was to very simply shift it from how do I look to how do I feel. So even in the sessions when he was walking in, when perhaps he was feeling the pressure of eyes around him or the mirrors, it was like, how am I feeling just now? How am I feeling after that set? How am I feeling after this workout? And staying away from how do I look as a result of this, or how are people perceiving me, or how am I perceiving myself? So that seems like a really simple mindset. I know in theory that is very simple. In reality, it can be a lot harder, but it's a really helpful tool. If we can turn the focus inward, it can go such a long way. Thirdly, mindfulness. Now, this is the top result. Oh, my phone. Whenever I say "Okay, Google," my phone decides to 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 interject, and I must have said something that sounded like that. So sorry, sorry about that. So yeah, moving on. Mindfulness next. Now, this is really just a strategy that you can use generally. It is really helpful though with the previous point with internal focus because it does just help to ground you in the present moment. One of the most simple mindfulness tools that you can use is the five senses. So just take a moment, close your eyes if you want to, or just lower your vision and simply identify one thing you can see. Well, okay, you'll have to keep your eyes open, I suppose. Lower your vision. But yeah, one thing you can see, one thing you can hear, one thing you can taste, touch, and smell. And that really simple practice can just help to, like I say, turn that focus inward and keep you in the present rather than focusing on what's going on around you, perhaps ruminating on the past or the future, just taking a moment to focus inward. A couple of other tools that you can use to help with this is the mind muscle connection, which is actually something that is used quite heavily in sort of conventional strength and gym training where we're focusing on the feelings. We're trying to feel the muscle that we're working. So if we're doing a bicep curl, for example, we're really focusing our attention on the biceps. Can we feel the contractions of it? And trying to strengthen that connection. And that can be a really helpful, I would argue that is actually a mindfulness tool that you can use. So not only are you going to get physical benefits from it, you also get mental benefits too. And the last one would be breathing as well. So just some very simple breathing exercises that you can do that can be really helpful, especially when it comes to anxiety that we've talked about earlier. Thinking about your like box breathing, for example. So you're taking a 4 second breath in, holding it for 4 seconds, breathing out for 4 seconds, and then holding it again for 4 seconds. You repeat that. Keep that image of a box in your mind and just follow your way around it, timing your breaths to each one. So mindfulness there, really helpful tool. I know for me, when I first tried mindfulness, I thought this is weird. I don't like it initially, but the more I practiced it, the more I'd certainly got from it and found it to be a really helpful tool in the long run. The last one is valued centered goals. Now, this is for those of you who are really struggling to make or feel like you're not making any progress with your health and fitness. You need to potentially go back to the start. You need to go back to the very, very start and consider the goals that you have set. Because if those goals don't align with who you are as a person, it's more than likely not going to succeed. We need to set goals that are orientated around our own values. And in doing so, that's going to initiate a desire to match our behaviors to said goals or to said values. So, for example, let's say you've got one of your values is connectedness. You really value connectedness. Then it might be sensible to set a goal of like, what every month I'm going to make sure I catch up with at least 3 friends. I know that's not specifically a fitness one, but that ties into your mental health and well-being, no doubt. So really take some time to consider your values. This is something I use in my coaching calls initially, is to get to know the person and their values, so I know whether or not the goals that they're wanting to achieve are fitting those values, or if not, how can we adapt them or change them to ensure that they fit nicely into their values, rather than setting these wishy-washy smart goals which get you probably nowhere. Okay, and then the last three that I'll not spend so much time on these, the three selves. So firstly, self-care. Now, I don't like using the term self-care because I know for a lot of guys in particular, the term self-care is a little off-putting because it probably conjures up pictures of like bubble bath and yoga and ice plunges and stuff like that. Now, those could serve as somebody's self-care, but self-care is literally any activity that adds to your well-being. For me, bubble baths and ice plunges do not do anything for me. So I would not consider them self-care. And this is a really key point to understand. You need to figure out what constitutes self-care for you. So for me, going out on my motorbike, going for a spin, that would be self-care for me because I come away from that buzzing, feeling great, feeling really good, had a really nice time. But I know if I stuck Abby, my wife, on the back, she would come away feeling the absolute opposite. She'd be feeling anxious and scared and upset. So, yeah, you need to figure out that you need to firstly understand that what some activities, there's no activities that are out of bounds. Some activities might be for you, some of them might not be. Okay. And it can literally be anything, providing it's adding to your well being. Now, I've heard a counter argument to that being, well, I like eating crisps and I like eating junk food and sitting in front of the telly and that sort of thing. Yeah, that could be self-care, but remember, it needs to add to your well-being. So if we're getting to a point where we are sitting on the couch all day eating far too much of the junk food, is that adding to our well-being? No. There's certainly a sweet spot, like taking some time during the week to sit down and enjoy some tasty food in front of the telly. Does that add to your well-being? Absolutely. But when it becomes excessive, it's no longer adding to your well-being. So yeah, but that is really to reinforce that it can be any activity and it needs to be suited to you and what you need and what you enjoy. The next one is self-compassion, which is another term that I see a lot of men like cringe at. Um, Self-compassion is something that is often associated with being very gentle, and there's no doubt that that is part of being self-compassion, is being gentle towards yourself. Um, I think many of us find it very easy to be nice and kind and gentle to other people, but when it comes to ourselves, we find it very difficult to be that. We find that the inner critic almost takes over. Now, I would definitely encourage you to work on that, to work on how you talk to yourself, and try and develop a little bit more compassion and understanding towards yourself. But also understand that self compassion isn't just this gentle approach. Is it compassionate? Again, if I use that example of being on the couch all week, eating loads of junk food, is it compassionate for me to just be really gentle and be like, "Oh, it's fine. Yeah, don't worry about it." No, if it's having a negative impact on me, the compassionate thing would be, right, Chris, get up off your arse and do something else. Get outside, go for a walk, because that's compassionate. That's me being concerned for my well-being, my health, and me wanting to intervene to do something about it. So get rid of this idea of self-compassion as this gentle thing. It can be quite fierce at times. And it's the final thing I'll say on self-compassion is just listen to your body. And this is something I emphasize with a lot of my clients is really listen to your body and give it what it needs. If it needs that hour's rest instead of going to the gym for an hour, give it that. And that might take some practice, but really listen to what it needs and work on showing it some self-compassion. This might sound like a really foreign concept, and I know for me, I would have found this very, I would have been quite unsure about this myself a few years ago, but it can really be revolutionary when it comes to improving your own relationship with yourself, and then when it comes to moving towards achieving your fitness goals. If we can be compassionate to ourselves, it means that we're giving ourselves space when things are getting tough, but we're also giving ourselves that kick up the arse when we need it as well to help us move forward. The final thing is self reflection. So, this is another really important tool along the journey. Before getting into this, I would just emphasize once again that everyone is different. Similar to what I was saying about your self care, some activities might suit you, some might not. Everyone's different and built different, and therefore we need to understand what works best for you. And this is what I do in my coaching. This is why I spend so long. I take an hour at least to in the early stages to talk to my clients to help me understand what makes them tick, what they like, what they don't like, even as far down to specific exercises, what they like and what they don't like, because I don't want to give them something that they're going to hate. It's going to be something enjoyable and motivating. So you need to do the same. You need to reflect yourself and begin to understand yourself better. What do you need? What works for you? And who cares if someone's telling you to do this or do that? If it doesn't fit you, if it doesn't work, you disregard it. Find the things that work for you. And once you've found those things, stick to them relentlessly. Final thing I'll say on self-reflection, really good tool for self-reflection and understanding things a little bit better. Journaling. Journaling. Simple. Grab a pen, grab a bit of paper. You can even download an app on your phone, type a few notes in there. Doesn't have to be long, doesn't have to be every day. But that in itself, just the act of writing things down can help to bring clarity and perspective. Now, I know I said I wouldn't be so long on this one now. I've spent I've spent quite some time doing it. So apologies for that. But we'll move on. We'll move on. The final thing I would say about your goals, your health and fitness goals, if you're struggling to make progress, the best thing, and I'm not biased, of course not, the best thing you could do is hire a coach or a PT because there's literal scientific research to show that working with a PT increases your chance of success. Shock. The study in particular showed an improved adherence and improved results when working with a PT in comparison to working without. 73% of subjects in this study made significant improvements with a PT in just a 10-week period. And please say you get the Ron Burgundy reference. Yeah, thanks. Okay, moving on. So that's a little bit about coaching, overcoming barriers, the connection between mind and body. We're now going to consider World Mental Health Day and the theme of this day. So the theme of 2023 is mental health as a universal human right. So one of my pet peeves when it comes to mental health is when people say things like, "Oh, did you hear about Bob? He's got mental health. He signed off work because he's got mental health." Um, and this comes from a misunderstanding of what mental health actually is. We need to improve our understanding as a society around mental health because that's key when it comes to respecting other people's human rights. This day will and also improving that understanding and education around mental health will help to break down that stigma so that those who are struggling with their mental health are treated equally and with dignity and respect. So what I wanted to do in this section was very, very quickly, I know I've said that a few times today, I'm going to retract that. What I wanted to do today was just to go through the mental health continuum, which is this right here. It's quite simple. It's quite simple, but it's just to give you a better understanding of mental health, mental well-being. And there is a difference. Mental health and mental well-being are not the same. They're connected, but they're different. So the best example I could give to help you understand this is physical well-being against your physical health. So your physical well-being day to day, how you feel, um, if you have had poor sleep, if you've drank a lot of alcohol, if you've sat on your arse all day, then your physical well-being is not going to be great, is it? You're not going to be firing on all cylinders. You're not going to be feeling, really good. You're not going to be feeling good. Does that, however, mean that immediately you have a problem with your physical health, like you develop some kind of physical illness? No, of course not. It doesn't. If you are in a state of prolonged poor physical well-being, however, that may lead to an issue with your physical health. Same. So day to day, our mental well-being can fluctuate. And that can be dependent on a variety of factors, similarly to your physical well-being. So nutrition, sleep, hydration, exercise, social connections, all of these things can feed into your mental well-being day to day. If we're having poor mental well-being one day, does that mean that we have a mental health issue? No, of course not. But if we have poor mental well-being over a prolonged period of time, might that contribute towards a mental health issue? Yes, it might. So this continuum here is just a way of understanding mental health and mental well-being, and I'm going to run through this quadrant to help you understand it. So, firstly, I should say first, you can see the white line there is mental health, and the black line is mental well-being. So we can move along these scales. We can on both sides, and we can move along the scale of mental health and also the scale for mental well-being as well. As you see, it separates this into 4 different sections. We'll start with the top left. So this is where we have good mental well-being, but poor mental health. And that is possible. I was in that situation for a long time where I was functional. I was struggling with my mental health. I had mental health challenges and symptoms, but I was able to go to work and I was able to socialize. Moving on, top right, this is where we have good mental health with good mental well-being. This is where we all want to be. It's sunshine and rainbows. Lovely stuff. I don't think I need to expand on that much further. Then on the bottom right, we have poor mental well-being with good mental health. So for this, think about bereavements or accidents. So you're experiencing negative emotions, or you've got poor mental well-being as a result of these incidents. And that's very normal, but that doesn't mean you have a mental health issue. In time, what's likely to happen is your mental well-being is going to improve again. And therefore, the chances of you developing a mental health issue are quite low. Then bottom left, this is where we have poor mental health with poor mental well-being. This is where we're perhaps becoming isolated, experiencing a lot of really difficult symptoms and finding life hard, really difficult to cope. As I say, throughout life, we are moving around this continuum. It's a sliding scale. And as I was reflecting on with the barriers, this can be a really helpful tool just to reflect, do a bit of self-reflection and understand, where are you at the moment? Where would you land on this mental health continuum? So that's just a little bit of understanding around mental health and mental well-being. I thought I'd tie in the exercise side as well. So just some considerations to keep in mind when it comes to mental health. mental health issues as well. So, firstly, exercise is stress. So, when we exercise, we are placing physical stress on the body. Now, as I mentioned earlier, this is something that we need in order to make improvements and advancements in our health and fitness. However, stress is still stress. So if we go into an exercise session where we're feeling stressed already and we are just simply adding more stress to that, then we're setting up ourselves up for a disaster. So there is some. This is why with clients at the start of a session, I'll ask how they feel. How are they feeling energy wise? Sometimes I'll ask how are they feeling stress wise. Rate that on a 1 to 10 scale for me. And depending on where they're landing, sometimes I will pull a session back a little bit. There's no need to push harder and to add to their stress. I want to remove some stress, not add stress to their life. Another consideration to make as well for people who struggle with anxiety in particular, sometimes exercise naturally obviously increases your heart rate and your breathing rate, which can replicate the symptoms of a panic attack and can therefore actually increase anxiety in some people in some instances. It's not something I've ever experienced before, but it's something that is certainly true for some individuals and something to be aware of as well. The next thing is excessive exercise. So, exercise as a compulsion. For some people, exercise can become quite compulsive, and that is obviously something that we need to be aware of. Um, Taking a step away from compulsions, though, just thinking about exercise more generally, and excessive exercise, we need to ensure that we are working within a sort of sweet spot. We don't want to be underdoing it where we're not training hard enough to elicit changes, but we also don't want to be pushing it too much because if we do that, we're at risk of overtraining, and that comes with a range of nasty symptoms, some physical and some mental as well. So something just to be aware of. And the last thing is if you're someone who takes medication for your mental health or your physical health, there are sometimes side effects that can affect your ability to exercise, and that's something just to be aware of. A couple of other more positive things to think about when it comes to exercise is firstly green exercise. This is exercise outdoors in nature. There is some research to suggest that it may lower anxiety, tension, anger, depression, and fatigue. So a really good way. I know that the weather's not great and not really conducive to green exercise at the moment here in Scotland, but yeah, it can be a really helpful tool. Group training as well, you get not only the benefits of exercise, but you get the social benefit as well. There is also some research to suggest that you actually perform better when being watched or when under the presence of other people. So, yeah, another reason to consider hiring a coach or going along to a group such as the Strong Men. You will perform at a greater level rather than just training by yourself. And the last thing, and this is not based on science at all, only anecdotes. There is no doubt in my mind that exercise does something in terms of allowing people to talk. From the very first day of me being a PT, I've recognized and understood that clients tend to tell you a lot of things. In fact, they'll tell you things that they won't really tell many other people. And if you were to ask 100 PTs, what occupation is your job most like? I can almost guarantee you that at least 90 of them would say like a therapist or a counselor. There is something about exercise and the role that we have that where talking just seems to happen a little bit more naturally. Now, I do think exercise plays a role in that. No doubt those good feelings that come up as a result perhaps maybe open the gates a little bit. Great. So that is pretty much us. We're just going to finish off very quickly by considering what's next for the Wellbeing PT. So that's 5 years down. I was going to say five to go, but I don't, I don't know. That's definitely not right. I don't have a time frame on my work. I hope it goes on for as long as possible. But yeah, I wanted just to very briefly talk about what's been happening and where I want to go. So in this year, I have started coaching Glasgow as well as Edinburgh. So currently my week is split between the two cities. I'm doing one-to-one coaching still at Energy Gym in Edinburgh, which is a really great facility. And I've been there since I started. So that's a full 5 years. And then I've began coaching as well out of Central Strength, which is a really well-equipped gym in the city centre. And doing one-to-one work there as well. So that's been really good. It's been nice to have that variation, I guess, between the two cities, the two facilities. And the two cities, they're very different, very, very different. and I'm enjoying it so far. So I'm going to continue to offer that service in both cities. In addition to that, I do online coaching as well, so you don't have to be in Glasgow or Edinburgh in order to work with me. I have a number of clients, and I've worked with clients in all across the world. I've had clients in Norway, Australia, New Zealand, Mexico, America. There's probably a couple of others as well. So yeah, you're not just confined to just Edinburgh or Glasgow. The strongmen. Now, this has been the biggest project for me over the last year, and it will continue to be. This is something I've been working on a lot over the year, just trying to get a better understanding of what men in particular are looking for from a group such as the strongmen. I have been doing some events. We do have a group up and running at the moment. However, that is all due to change. The format and the structure of the group is due to change come 2024. Excuse me. So, what is going to happen is there's going to be um, there's two different sort of options when it comes to the strongmen. So, the first thing that I've been working on is a 6-week course. Now, if you're new to the strongmen, this is basically a group for men who are wanting to work on both their physical and their mental strength. And we meet through two different events primarily. So we have a build event, which is a gym-based session where we're working on getting physically strong. And then we have a thrive session as well, which is a online meetup when we're basically just having a bit of a conversation, sometimes going through sort of self-development type topics as well. Now, with a 6-week course, what we would do is instead of having these sessions once a month, we would have them weekly. So it's a bit of a crash course in the strongmen. So we have a weekly gym session, we have a weekly call, and in addition to that, we have some weekly education around strength training and mental well-being and a whole load of other things. Nutrition's another area that we'll be talking about as well. So we've got the 6-week sort of crash course as well as these ongoing memberships. So the current structure of the strongmen is going to be maintained. It's going to be unchanged as well. We'll still have our monthly get together in the gym. We'll still have our monthly thrive call, which is the video call, and we're going to also look at bringing in some more socials and that sort of stuff as well. Now, these two events should run as a parallel. So people who have done the 6-week course could, at the end of the course, have the option then to drop into a more long-term membership if they want to continue. So that is the idea with the strongmen. I'm really looking forward to getting everything up and running come 2024. I had set myself a target of getting the 6-week course ready for January. However, it might be a little bit tight. I may have to push it a month, but I will keep everyone updated. It'll be very clear on my social media about what's happening with the strongmen and the 6-week course in particular. So yeah, that's something I'm really excited about. The course is coming along nicely. There's still a lot of work to do though on it, and I'm excited to see the finished product. The last thing that I wanted to mention, and this is definitely more of a long-term project. So there's no doubt the strongmen and the coaching are the main focus points at the moment. But longer term, what I would love to do is to have a bit more of an influence on the health and fitness industry. As I've reflected on already in this presentation, there is no doubt that there are lots of issues in the UK regarding mental health. And in my opinion, exercise is something that is vastly underutilized as not as a treatment plan, but as an intervention, perhaps is a better term for that. So what I would like to do is, having got this strongman set up and having had run that for quite some time, to collect and collate some information and statistics that I can then take to the NHS, for example, and say, look, this is what I do. This is the intervention. We'd love to run some kind of pilot study and eventually kind of build on that and make it a more accessible plan, not just in sort of Edinburgh, Glasgow, but kind of further afield as well. So that's one area in which I want to look into, because I feel like it's such a vastly underutilized tool that can be so helpful for so many people. The next area is the fitness industry, and I also touched on this in the presentation. There is a lack of education for PTs when it comes to working with people who have mental health issues, or generally just understanding mental health and knowing what to do, or some training considerations, I suppose, when it comes to uh, to working with clients. So what I'm looking to do again in the future is to create some kind of course that I could then take to potentially the not just the sort of big gyms and that sort of thing, but also the PT qualification companies themselves to say, look, this is a really critical component of a PT's work, and it's something that we should definitely be adding to the qualification. So there's a bit of a snapshot into what's coming. Some new things that you've definitely not heard me mention before. So a lot to do, a lot of exciting possibilities as well, and I'm really looking forward to seeing where everything goes. So wrapping things up, I just wanted to say a huge thank you to everybody who has taken some time to join today. I really, really appreciate that. Um, if there were any questions, then this would be the time to do that. I'm just double checking to see if there were any questions. Sorry, bear with me one moment. But if not, we can just wrap things up there. Okay, and I'll just double check. Okay, great. Well, I think that is everything. I'm not seeing any questions in the chat. I would think in that case, I'll just leave it there if there's nothing. I don't know how I've ended up putting that on the stream. There we go. Great. I'll leave it a couple of minutes. If you do have any questions, then please do pop them in the chat, and then I can answer them. If not, like I say, I'll give you a couple of minutes to pop your questions in, and then I'll finish there. Thanks, Ailey. Thanks for joining. I'm glad to hear you really enjoyed that, despite my phone going off and not being able to say the word particularly. Yeah, I managed it there, which is good. Particularly, I'm glad to hear you enjoyed it despite all of that. And yeah, thank you so much for taking some time to join. And for the others who have joined as well, thank you. I really, really do appreciate it. But yeah, it's been a very interesting few years. I did not expect or anticipate being in this situation. Yeah, I was I was going to say my wits end. I wasn't at my wits end at a job basically, and I was not expecting to not have a job, and the options were either to start again from ground zero with another company, lose all my clients, or try to start up a self-employed business and take some clients with me, and that's what I did. And yeah, it's been a very much a roller coaster since then, and it's been really interesting to see how things have developed and changed, and I'm very excited about the next few years and confident that things will pan out well, especially with that. I'm excited about the strongman group as in particular, as well as seeing the coaching side continue to grow as well. Right, I've not had any further questions, so I'm going to wrap things up there. Like I say, thanks so much for taking some time tonight to come on, and I really enjoyed this presentation. I hope you did too. Okay, take care. Bye now.